This is pretty amazing. In a couple of different reasons. But first, the backstory. What the researchers were trying to do is compare wild blueberries, since it's easier to get a hold of here in the US as opposed to New Zealand black currant. Now, they found out that the wild blueberries, at least according to the study, outperformed the New Zealand black currant on all levels. But what are we talking about? Well, this is as follows. Look at this particular chart, or the chart below. You notice a reduction in lactate levels, which is real important for repetitive motion in regard to maintaining contraction strength. A lot of elite athletes are very familiar with that. And also number two, which is kind of cool, it began to give positive markers, we'll say, in regard to increasing the fats being oxidized in reference to strenuous exercise as opposed to carbohydrates being oxidized. Why is that important? Because normally, at low to moderate intensity exercise, let's say 40% of VO2 max, the body naturally tends to burn, or I should say oxidize, fats for fuel as opposed to carbohydrates. But as you begin to increase that level of strenuous exercise, in this case, is 65% of VO2 max for 40 minutes per se, then the body tends to burn, or I should say oxidize, carbohydrates as opposed to oxidizing fats. That's where the wild blueberry comes in to help change the parameters, or I should say markers, to help increase the effects, or I should say increase those positive markers with that type of strenuous exercise. And albeit too, people ask, well, what if you're sedentary? Well, that it does as well. So let's get right into the study. Now keep in mind for the third time, popular phrase. Basically, this was only done, or these markers were achieved simply with the consumption of 25 grams total of freeze-dried wild blueberries for 14 days. But now let us review. And here we go. Effect of wild blueberries on fat oxidation rates in aerobically trained males. When compared to studies supplement with New Zealand black currants, I want to bring this up important again on aerobically trained participants. The study demonstrated significant and greater increases in fat oxidation at all time points. It's not to brag, but still just the same. And there may be different study parameters that could lead to some confounding, but regardless of that, 375 milligrams of the anthocyanins in the wild blueberry, to repeat over and over again, was yielding quite positive results. All right, let's go to the abstract first. Wild blueberries have been documented to decrease oxidative stress in active and sedentary populations, for those who don't have the opportunity to get out as often, as well as influence lipolytic enzymes and increase the rate of fat oxidation during rest. Now to fast forward. Wild blueberries increase fat oxidation when cycling at 65% of VO2 peak by 19.7% at 20 minutes, 43.2% at 30 minutes, and 31.1% at 40 minutes. And carbohydrate oxidation, because it's kind of switching those parameters, decreased by, let's say 10, 19, 10 at 20, 19 at 30, and 15 at 40, just around, of cycling at, of course, CO, 65% of VO2 max. And now we look at that mixed chart once again. Boom, boom. Makes a little bit more sense. Now to proceed to the next part. The lactate was lower with wild blueberries, freeze-dried wild blueberries, at 20, 30, and 40 minutes. Results indicate that wild blueberries may increase the rate of fat oxidation during moderate intensity activity in healthy and active males. And we look at the lactate chart. Pretty interesting, not to be confused with the milk sugar. All right, to proceed. As exercise intensity increases, the rate of fat oxidation decreases and cannot meet fuel demands. This was the challenge, leading to a greater reliance on glycogen stores. Unfortunately, sustained reliance on glycogen can result in glycogen depletion. Well, how do you solve that? And lead to fatigue and decreased exercise capacity. Maximizing fat mobilization and oxidation and slowing glycogen depletion may improve performance at various exercise intensity, i.e. enter freeze-dried wild blueberries with the 375 milligrams of anthocyanins, because that's important. Given that fat is a primary fuel source during low to moderate intensity exercise, to reiterate, peaking at 60 to 65% of VO2 max after about 15 to 20 minutes, with glucose becoming the primary fuel source as intensity increases should you go to 85% around the VO2 max. Yes, this does appear to work once again with sedentary individuals as well. So you don't have to go all the way to that level, just to say. Now, the methodology, to reiterate, word of the day. Wild blueberry diet. Freeze-dried whole wild blueberry powder was donated by the Wild Blueberry Association to Maine, containing berries from the 2017 crop. It's kind of like wine, but there it is. The process of freeze-drying the berries resulted in the least reduction of polyphenol content. Participants were provided with a jar and a food grade blender ball and instructed to mix the rich 12.5 grams of the powder in 125 milliliters of water twice a day for 2 weeks, approximately 8 hours apart. The 25 grams of total daily intervention intake is the equivalent to 1 cup of raw fruit, providing, once again, 375 milligrams of anthocyanins. The reason I keep on harping on the 375, because as you go through the study, they're going to yield to you or reveal to you that anything about 100 milligrams or below seemed not to have any effect. So a lot of people look at the bottle of vitamins or whatever it is, they see 10, 15 milligrams of anthocyanins. If you want to get the outcome of the particular study, you got to boost it way up, at least to the 300 milligram range, preferably. And it documents an effective dose to decrease levels of oxidized DNA bases and increase the resistance to DNA damage. There may be other benefits to wild blueberry supplementation, including increasing exercise performance, significantly lower plasma lactate, as we looked at the chart before, in values at 20, 30, and 40 in the wild blueberry condition were found, to reiterate, which are similar to the results of the New Zealand blackcurrant powder intake, causing a downward and rightward lactate shift at submaximal and maximum power outputs in trained athletes. Lactate removal from skeletal muscle may be impacted by increases in peripheral blood flow and nitric oxide, the word of the day or the week of the month, mediated vasodilation following anthocyanin supplementation. Increased blood flow during exercise may result in decreased mechanisms causing fatigue, such as preventing decreases in pH in the muscle and decreased force production, thus increasing exercise performance. Thank you, freeze-dried wild blueberries. Now, to conclude, which is basically to reiterate what we just covered, the current study demonstrated that a 14-day intake of 25 grams of freeze-dried wild blueberries supplying 375 milligrams of anthocyanins and approximately 1 cup of fresh fruit equivalent. Nothing that's, not obtainable. Significantly increased fat oxidation rates, decreased carbohydrate oxidation rates, and led to lower blood lactate values without changes in glycerol and fatty acid concentrations during the 40 minutes of cycling at 65% of VO2 peak in endurance-trained males. These findings may have potential effects on endurance exercise and performance. And what is spectacular, once again, that was just 2 weeks. The use of anthocyanin-containing foods to increase fat oxidation during exercise has a date focused on the effects of New Zealand blackcurrant. And not to knock New Zealand blackcurrant, it's just the fact is it's a little easier to obtain, wild blueberry here. This is the first study to investigate the effects of wild blueberries on submaximal exercise parameters. The effects of wild blueberries are important to the greater accessibility in the USA compared to New Zealand blackcurrant. So, pretty amazing overall. When you think about it, this is just an incredible superfood. Now we begin to add that up with other things we covered in the past, for example, like almonds. Now I'm eating a lot of almonds from the show a few weeks ago. But you can see that if you need to increase performance, there are a lot of whole foods available, or freeze-dried, or spray-dried, or however you want to do it, that are available at hand that can yield incredible health returns. I should say not even health returns. In the case of athletics and metabolism and general overall well-being, performance returns, which are just there and available to us. So there it is, 25 grams of freeze-dried wild blueberries, 14 days, yielded the result of increasing fat oxidation and decreasing carbohydrate oxidation, utilizing fat for fuel more effectively, as well as reducing those lactate levels down, which overall are incredibly positive markers for making it to that next level. So again, gratitude to the researchers. Wonderful research. I am humbled you watch, and I'll see you all once again next week. Catch you then. Bye.